Hello everyone, my name is Pepsilk and welcome to Thoughts On. This is a series where I analyze games and give my opinions on them. Today, we'll be looking at High on Life, a first-person shooter game that came out of the blue with little to no marketing and critics reviewing it at the last minute. I was aware of this game coming out beforehand, but you never really saw it on YouTube or Twitch ads. Suffice to say that it is a goofy game at best, with an emphasis on comedy and dialogue alongside a side of combat. Developed by Squanch Games, I had no idea that this studio was being run by the co-creator of Rick and Morty, Justin Roiland, which instantly got me to get this game on site with no thoughts, as I'm a big fan of the TV series. Nevertheless, let's dive into this bad boy and see what's offered in store, shall we?
Oh, fuck yes, thank you!
You start the game off as a Zoomer freshman with no job and ambitions in life. Your sister tries to get you to do coke, even though this becomes a joke and means for your character's look, which funnily enough has no impact whatsoever because there aren't any mirrors in the game where you can see yourself and you're wearing a helmet for 90% of the time. After a few moments, you head outside your house to find that aliens have invaded Earth, with the intent of using humans as a resource to few these goopy looking things. One of the aliens gets shot and you pick up a talking gun known as Kenny, who spits translator acid into your brain to make you understand him and learn about the G3 cartel, a group of aliens who want to take over the world. Kenny decides that he wants to take them head on, and so without further questions, you descend into the galaxy as an intergalactic bounty hunter, intent of ridding it of the cartel once and for all. I gotta say that a simple story is all we need these days, as most modern games have gone for these complicated stories that either don't make sense or you need to watch a bunch of YouTube videos just to understand what the hell is going on. High on Life gives it to you in the first hour, and it's simply point A to point B, going planet after planet, hunting bounties and shooting bad guys. Dialogue is the main star of this game, as gathered from the trailers and little marketing. High on Life is advertised as a comedy-based FPS with combat being on the side. So how is it overall? Well, based on my personal experience, the dialogue was okay and it didn't really hit me much. I just didn't find most of the jokes and conversations all that entertaining, minus a few moments. At first glance, the talks between you and Kenny seem funny and you'll probably get a good laugh or two out of it. But as you get the other weapons, which I'll get into later, and meet new characters, it can get out of hand and very annoying, with characters using the F-bomb more times than I can count, and lines that make me question the universe's existence. Now, granted, comedy is a very subjective matter, and you also need to take in Justin's style of comedy writing, so it's a matter of whether you like his writing or not. Even the enemy chatter moments are kind of cringe. Like, there's this one line that enemies say when they die that they're dying, and say that multiple times. Didn't get it from any of my footage, but take my word for it. Thankfully, you can adjust the enemy and gun chatters in the settings to your liking, with each setting having less and less dialogue as you tune it down. I personally think that you should keep it on the frequent default setting and experience the game for what it is, because you'll never know if you'll find the game truly funny or not by the end of it. I've seen critics and players say that by turning it all the way down it made the overall experience fun, and if you want to play it that way, I say go nuts. This doesn't, however, remove the key moments in the game where you need to be engaged in conversation, so you still have to deal with it one way or another should you dislike any of it. I highly suggest watching any of Justin Roiland's shows or watch some clips of the game before you decide to buy this, as there are lots of talking and questionable moments. I did, however, have one funny moment which I need to give a shout out to Justin for, which had me dying the whole way. It's right towards the end. Spoiler warning, I'll give you a few seconds to skip ahead to the next time frame if you don't want to see it. Good to go? Just making sure. Alright, let's talk about it. So the final level in the game has you take on Gargantuous, the leader of the G3 cartel. And you can't have a final level without a special weapon or gimmick. In a few bounties prior, you get a damaged weapon by the name of Lesduit, which Kenny happens to remember as he was the leader of the Gatlian resistance before their planet got destroyed. It gets repaired and has his speech checks destroyed, prompting him to only say his name. This becomes prevalent throughout the level as you get to use him and all you hear him say is, "Let's do it!" in an enthusiastic tone, happy to be back on the field tearing aliens a new one. His tone and the tone of this mission alone makes up for all the missed dialogue and opportunities that the game tried to make me laugh at. Since his weapon is on a cooldown and when he's ready, he just screams his name. I couldn't stop laughing, and the final nail in the coffin was after you kill Gargantuous.
Now you're a hero.
I'm so glad you made it. We did it.
The characters in this game are likable enough that I somewhat give a shit about them, but not on Mass Effect companion levels. You got Lizzie, your sister, who decides to date an alien throughout the game and has her own journey where you gotta opt in and help her out. Gene, the former bounty hunter who helps you get started on your bounty hunting career and acts as a bit of a mentor to the player, while also being a lazy hobo who's lost both his legs. Then you have the Gatlians themselves, which are the weapons that you'll be picking up and taking with you along your adventures. The side and boss characters are kinda cool as well, and some of them will have their own dialogue and side quests, where they'll ask you to do something or just hear them out. I never really hated anyone in this game, just didn't find myself to really care about what happens to them. If we take all the other elements out and just dive into the gameplay, this game is actually pretty good as a standard first-person shooter, with additional elements added to it. The most surprising thing that I want to mention is the verticality, which adds a good amount of depth to the moment-to-moment combat, and allows the player to tether up to these anthole thingies, and fly around with a jetpack when you get access to it. There's no inaccuracy when you're flying as well, so you can shoot while in the sky for as long as you want with no repercussions, and it's great fun. I also like the sliding mechanic, which lets you bash into enemies and stun them for a period of time, which is awesome and allows for some get-in-their-face moments. Weapons consist of primary and secondary attacks, with the secondary attacks being used for both killing and navigating sections of the map. Yes, this game decided to take an approach that hasn't been changed in over a decade and added platforming to sections of the game to add a balance of both that and combat. It works well for the most part though. As I mentioned before, throughout the game you'll pick up different Gatlians that each provide their own uses, feeling distinct and different. You've got Kenny, who's your best friend and is a basic pistol that shoots goo, as well as a glob shot that can be used to juggle and shoot enemies while they're flying for extra damage. Gus may very well be the cutest of the bunch, as he is not only based off a frog, but he's always so happy to be shooting aliens alongside you and is never angry throughout the entire game. He functions as a shotgun that is, well, a shotgun, and shoots these discs that you can deflect back with the knife for a bounce effect that can continuously damage enemies. Speaking of the knife, I should probably give him an honorable mention as well. Knifey is a knife that you pick up during your first bounty for Gene, has an Australian accent and reminds me of Junker Queen from Overwatch 2 except he's the male version of her. He always quenches for blood and has something cool to say every time you cut into a boss for the DNA. He's also the one that gives you access to tethering and takedowns are possible to do with him as well. Although after the first 2 hours, I never felt inclined to use him during combat since Gus and Kenny just seem to get the job done fine. Oh, and the takedown animations are clunky as fuck. Sweezy is an aggressive and serious Gatlian with the personality of a badass, willing to kill everything in a way to be known as the most dangerous Gatlian in the universe. This needler-inspired weapon shoots needles at her enemies, which can be combined with her right-click attack or a melee attack for more damage, and has a time bubble that can slow enemies and objects down, making aliens easy pickings. Finally, we have Creature, who's my favorite gun out of the 4. Not because he's friendly and cute like Gus, but because of his little aliens that he creates out of something. I don't know what he makes them out of. He can fire these little things at aliens which latch onto them and deal damage per second, and shoot a special little alien which allows the enemy alien to become friendly for a period of time. This is by far my favorite weapon by the end of the game, because with how chaotic the game can get at times, Creature can act as a distraction, firing these little guys at will and just letting them do all the work for you. I don't know. I did use the other weapons, but he just felt so right with how the combat scenarios play out. Maybe I'm just a lazy gamer who wants things done for me, and Creature is the man. Each of these weapons also have their own quirks for platforming, with Kenny's glob shot being used to lower platforms or catapult yourself to the other side of the map, attaching Gus's disc to lava so you can grapple towards him with Knifey, using Sweezy's time bubble to slow fans down and jump through them, and using Creature's little babies to shoot them into holes and open up doorways and paths for you. Each is integrated in their own way and adds variety to each of the scenarios given by the game. Anything is better than pressing a button to lower a bridge and walk across it. After every bounty you complete, you can go to the pawn shop to buy upgrades and mods for your character and weapons, providing different playstyles and options. There's passive and active mods. One such mod that I bought was for Creature that allowed him to shoot 3 little aliens with one click instead of one at a time, which meant more damage dealing at the cost of having to hold right click to charge him up, which can slow you down and increase your chances of being shot. I also like that as you're progressing through the game, you're always being given something new to try, so it never feels like the pacing is too fast or too slow. It's good enough that you're given time to try these new things and make them work in the levels ahead. It also helps to go back and explore places you couldn't go to in previous wars to collect items, and such items are stored in lug boxes, which contain pesos, the currency of the game, and these collectible cards that look cool. You can also buy these warp discs from this guy named Blordo, which give you access to new areas and things that have never been seen before, and the crystals that get these are earned from clearing warp bases throughout the game, which is a nice addition to the end game once you're done. Outside of these things though, there isn't really any incentive to explore, and even if you do these, there isn't a new game plus to try your maxed out character and experiment with different mods, which I hope is something that does eventually get added to the game because I'd love to play it a second time. One last thing to note is that there's these hunter challenges that you can do where you perform different feats and earn pesos, and it's all shown in this forums tab. As you progress through these, it'll open up new comments and posts from other bounty hunters. Nothing crazy here, but just thought I'd mention it in case anyone wants more lore or wants to get a good laugh or two in there. There's some laughs to be had from some of the responses they give in these posts. A criticism I'd like to give here is the ammo counts. In High on Life, your ammo count is unlimited, so you can use any gun that you want at your own will. Now granted, this is probably a developer decision to not have players worry about resource management, but I think having ammo counts would have been good for a game like this, as it would force players to use different weapons for different situations and come up with their own weapon combos. All they'd have to do to make up for this is add in ammo crates and spawn ammo drops from dead enemies. It'd make for a pretty interesting challenge. Perhaps they could add this in as a special game mode that players can pick down the line. I'm safe to say that High on Life runs like butter across the board. The only bug I ran into was where my player model's hand would stick out instead of sticking into the weapon model, so during moments where the player would hold the gun on the side while engaging in conversation, the hand would be out of place and behind the weapon instead of inside it. It's nice to have a well-running Unreal Engine 4 game for once, because most of these UE4 games that come out run like shit, so it's welcoming and deserves a commendation for that. While High on Life may be a good looking and a good running game, there are a few problems that I have with it. For starters, the lack of an FOV slider and quality options. Limiting your FOV is devastating for those that want to play this game, because without the slider, they can't play properly without feeling sick or nauseated. I don't understand why this was removed in the first place, as every modern FPS shooter has this option in there regardless, and to remove it is blasphemy. I want to take a guess and say it was due to the game being made for the Xbox as well, and they just decided to play lazy and not add it in for PCs. It doesn't take that long to add a slider in, guys. Come on. Seriously. Quality options are also lacking, with certain effects unavailable to turn off unless you go into the game's ini files and make some edits from there. But you shouldn't have to go into there in the first place just to turn something off. I had to turn the chromatic aberration off manually because it's an effect I heavily dislike, and we're not in water at all in this game, so why have it on? At least you can turn motion blur off. Thank fuck for that. Lastly, the price tag. My god, is this game not worth $85 on Steam? It's incredibly short, and even though they've put a lot of effort into the art style, the settings and the comedy, I don't even think those are enough to justify its ridiculous price. It's half of 85 at best. Thankfully, this can be rectified by picking it up on the Xbox Game Pass for dirt cheap if you're a first time user of $1 Australian or $15 Australian for ongoing users. Buy it once, play it, cancel recurring fees, never play it again. Although if for some reason you're a Steam fanatic and want it on Steam, I highly suggest waiting for a 40 to 50% off sale, then buy it. Who knows how long that'll take though. I had a blast playing through High on Life, and despite not completing everything after finishing the story to check bits that I missed, I think that even if I did it, I would have done it out of my own time to seek more of that time into this lovely and goofy world. Goofy is the best word I can use to describe this game, and the secret ending sets the game up for a potential sequel. Something I'd like to see where they take everything from the first game and make it better with improvements. Similar to how Doom Eternal improves upon Doom 2016. Just bring Creature and Gus back if you decide to do that, Squanch Games. Please. If you enjoyed, like the video. If I missed anything, comment down below, subscribe for more, and feel free to join the Discord where you can talk about video games, meet new people, post memes, and overall just have a good time. I'll have more coming to you soon. Peace.